Miles above the surface of Mars, a supersonic parachute is launched out of the back of the vehicle. 15 seconds after the parachute inflates, it's time to get rid of the heat shield. 6 pyrotechnic devices fire simultaneously, allowing the heat shield to fall and tumble away from the vehicle, exposing the lander to the surface of Mars. 10 seconds after the heat shield is dropped, 3 pyrotechnically deployed legs are released and locked for landing. About a minute later, the landing radar is turned on, sending pulses toward the surface of Mars as the vehicle starts to try to measure how high it is above the surface and how fast it's going. At about a mile above the surface of Mars, the lander falls away from the back shell and lights its engines. And very quickly, the vehicle must rotate out of the way so that the parachute and the back shell doesn't come down to hit it. The last thing that has to happen is that on the moment of contact, the engines have to shut down immediately. If they don't, the vehicle will tip over. So if all the steps of entry, descent, and landing happen perfectly and we are safely on the surface of Mars, we'll be ready to do some exciting new science.
Hey girl, open the walls, play with your dolls. We'll be a perfect family. When you walk away, it's when we really play. You don't hear me when I say, Mom, please wake up. Dad's with a slut, and your son is smoking cannabis. No one ever listens, it's wallpaper glistens. Don't let them see what goes down in the kitchen. Places, places, get in your places. Throw on your dress and put on your doll faces. Everyone thinks that we're perfect. Please don't let them look through the curtains. Picture, picture, smile for the picture. Pose with your brother, won't you be a good sister? Everyone thinks that we're perfect. Please don't let them look through the curtains. C-O-L-L-H-O-U-S-E. I see things that nobody else sees. Hey girl, look at my mom, she's got it going on. Ha! You're blinded by her jewelry. When you turn your back, she pulls out a flask and forgets his infidelity. Oh, she's coming to the attic. Plastic, go back to being plastic. No one ever listens, this wallpaper glistens. One day they'll see what goes down in the kitchen. Places, places, get in your places. Throw on your dress and put on your doll faces. Everyone thinks that we're perfect. Please don't let them look through the curtains. Picture, picture, smile for the picture. Pose with your brother, won't you be a good sister? Everyone thinks that we're perfect. Please don't let them look through the curtains. C-O-L-L-H-O-U-S-E. I see things that nobody else sees. Hey girl, hey girl, open your walls, play with your dolls. We'll be a perfect should be a good sister. Everyone thinks that we're perfect. Please don't let them look through the curtain. DOLLHOUSE. I see things that nobody else sees. DOLLHOUSE. I see things that nobody else sees.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Well, let me tell you, so do I. Good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and all of you ETs out there on the bite waves of the internet and wherever you're at down through time monitoring this show. I'm Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian, for some obvious reasons. But I would like to welcome you all to the Martian Revelation that is upon you all again now. And today's November 24th of 2018, or the 25th, depending upon your time zone, as this airs through time. And you're listening to this broadcast through www.lnmradionetwork.com, where the shield of LNM is the symbol of truth for the Martian revelation, and also your defense for the war which we all fight against the evil dark mission is to bring you the truth one show at a time. And LNM Radio Network is also 100% listener supported. So if you're a listener, please help support shows like The Martian Revelation, as it is because of you, the listener, of which makes The Martian Revelation possible to be brought to you all back through time. So please subscribe button on lnmradionetwork.com, and please share the link. And please donate to the network to allow it to continue being here for you, especially to bring you The Martian Revelation. But especially as well as we fight the war against evil dark mission, as again, we're all leading you away from the light and manipulating you all instead to helping you open your wallets and your pocketbooks to only allow them more power for their dark side special clubs to continue to mislead you all, to steer you away from the truth that they themselves not wish to face or even admit to. So tell me, what are you paying for? Wouldn't you rather support someone that's fighting for you? And I'm not charging, I'm just asking for donations. So your listenership and your donation support counts. And it helps us all to not only fight, but to win against those evil dark missionaries, as well as to secure a future which we all could literally make the Martian Revelation our reality by making our fate. So please donate today to lnmradionetwork.com, and also please donate to the Martian Revelation Show.
Go to www.thefacesofmars.com. That's www.thefacesofmars.com.
To become part of the Martian militia, and your donation support will help ensure that the Martian Revelation will continue to be brought to you all through time. But just remember also that if you're listening to this Martian Revelation show, then know this, that you are the resistance. Well, so that being said, I got to say, we are back again with another interesting show. I don't see it going in the direction of where it did last week. Wow, huh? But I'll tell you what, we are with the same guest again, Andrew Currie, and we're going to be bringing on Keith Laney with us to join in on this show and go into many different realms of the Martian Revelation, of where it brings us. So consider this a part two, of Andrew Currie and Keith Laney. He fell asleep last week anyway, so he wasn't able to make it. So it should be a pretty interesting show tonight and very informative. Because that's the thing that counts here is imagery. Imagery helps with a lot of things. So again,
go to www.thefacesofmars.com.
Scroll down the page and check out the guest imagery by clicking on them and being able to pop open the page and see it larger. Just be careful. Please don't leave the lnmradionetwork.com page. But as many of you all should know, the Mars Insight is on its way to Mars. It's set to land. Big event, November 26th. So I want to get into a couple articles. They're spaced a few days apart throughout the week because I think it's important for the build-up of what information there is to expect and understand about this current mission that's about to land on Monday. The Mars Insight. Again, where those subsurface illegals listeners to this show could appreciate. But from a phys.org article from November 20th, written by Marcia Dunn, was titled Mars Revisited, NASA spacecraft days away from risky landing. NASA is about to get its first U.S. visitor in years, a three-legged, one-armed geologist to dig deep and listen for quakes and other things listeners of this show could appreciate. NASA's Mars Insight makes its grand entrance through the rose-tinted Martian skies on Monday. Rose-tinted. Now, mind you, like Dr. Brandenburg said, by the way, Mars' sky is still blue. But after a 6-month, 300 million mile journey, it will be the first American spacecraft to land since the Curiosity rover in 2012 and the first dedicated to exploring underground. Again, where's those subsurface illegals? But NASA is going with a tried and true method to get this mechanical miner to the surface of the red planet, as we kind of looked at the beginning of the show. And engine firings will slow its final descent on the spacecraft will plop down on its rigid legs, mimicking the landings of earlier successful missions. That's where the old school ends and this $1 billion U.S.-European effort begins. Once flight controllers in California determine the coast is clear at the landing site fairly flat and rock-free, Mars Insight's 6-foot arm will remove the 2 main science experiments from the lander's deck and place them directly on the Martian surface. And no spacecraft has attempted anything like that before. The first don't stop there neither, apparently. But one experiment will attempt to penetrate 16 feet into Mars' surface using a self-hammering nail with heat sensors to gauge the planet's internal temperature. That would shatter the out-of-this-world depth record of 8 feet, drilled by the Apollo moonwalkers nearly half a century ago for lunar heat measurements. And the astronauts also left behind instruments to measure moonquakes. Mars Insight carries the first seismometers to monitor for Mars quakes if they exist. Yes, or listeners to this show can appreciate again, listen for the Mars quakes derived from the subsurface illegals. Or even because of the spot it's landing, it can also help us figure out possibly, is it volcanic or is it atmospheric? The cloud that's spewing forth, it seems, from Marcia Mons. That issue has still not been tackled. And both are still interesting as they are, pun intended, still up in the air. Are they? We need updates on that. Why aren't we getting that? But anyway, yet another experiment will calculate Mars's wobble, providing clues about the planet's core. And that could be advantageous because as planetary alignments or whatever happen, or if things are here on Earth, we could see maybe, just maybe, if there's a seismic wobble connection to the timing of Earth has its wobbles and seismic activities to what Mars may be seeing at those times, if anything. It could at least determine that, but I'm sure it has also its other purposes. But it would help us map out and understand Mars's oddballish orbit to begin with. Who knows? Especially upon its perigee and apogees. I think they're going to be waiting a mighty long time to see what that all entails, unless they can make that from predictive models based on the data they're able to acquire. But anyway, just a reminder, everybody, the Mars Insight will not, I repeat, will not be looking for signs of life, past or present. No light detectors are on board at all. Yet this cost $1 billion. But the spacecraft is like a self-sufficient robot, said lead scientist Bruce Banertz of NASA's JPL. And it's got its own brain. It's got an arm that can manipulate things around. Yes, Harold Wolowitz from the Big Bang kind of helped us understand what you guys could use that for. Okay, back to all seriousness. It can also listen with a seismometer. It can feel things with the pressure sensors and the temperature sensors as well. It pulls its own power out of the sun, he said. By scoping out the inside of Mars, scientists could learn how our neighbor and other rocky worlds, including the Earth and the Moon, formed and transformed over 1 billion years. I call that straight out bullshit. There's no way that that could be determined by what they're doing on these experiments on Mars. Again, snail turtle-like pace speed, policy agenda, while also playing us all as stupid. I mean, I'm just saying, there's no way that they could explain that. And especially if the planets are made up of different properties, that still has not been ruled out or proven that they're all made up of the same properties to begin with. In essence, you still have a whole lot of splaining going on to answer that big question. But I think like listeners and myself to this show can appreciate It's very easily to consider that you guys are looking for the subsurface illegals. We know where it launched from Vandenberg, and like Dr. Brandenburg stated, anything launched from Vandenberg has classified aspects to it and security. But Mars is much less geologically active than Earth, you think? And so its interior is closer to being in its original state, a tantalizing time capsule. Pun intended. There's code speak going on there. And I can certainly relate to a tantalizing time capsule. Maybe some of you listeners to this show could appreciate that as well. I know some people's consciousness are changing and the light gets brighter. Just saying. But Mars Insight stands to revolutionize the way we think about the inside of the planet. Oh, I bet, said NASA's Science Mission Chief Thomas Zurbuchen again. But first, the 800-pound vehicle needs to get safely to the Martian surface. Of course, no matter it's $1 million or $1 billion, that's the crux of the issue. Make sure it at least gets there and lands. But this time, there won't be ball bouncing down with the spacecraft tucked inside. None of that crap. Like there were for the Spirit and Opportunity rovers in 2004. And there won't be a sky crane to lower the lander like there was for the six-wheeled Curiosity during its dramatic 7 minutes of terror. That was crazy, acknowledged Mars Insight's project manager, Tom Hoffman. But he noted that anytime you're trying to land on Mars, it's crazy. Oh, I bet it is. I can relate, and I'm the mad Martian, so I know and see how crazy it is. But I don't think there's a sane way to do it, he states. Yeah, more ways than one. But no matter how it's done, he states, getting to Mars and landing there is hard and unforgiving. Well, yes, that's true. Again, whether $1 million or $1 billion, it's got to land there. It's got to succeed. But Earth's success rate of sending missions to Mars is a mere 40%. That includes planetary flybys dating back to the early 1960s, as well as the orbiter and landers. While it's had its share of flops, the United States has had by far the best track record, and no one else has managed to land and operate a spacecraft on Mars. 2 years ago, a European lander came in so fast its descent system eschewed, and then it carved out a crater on impact. But this time, NASA is borrowing a page from the 1976 twin Vikings and the 2008 Phoenix, which crashed, which also were stationary and three-legged. But you never know what Mars is going to do, Hoffman said. That's right, you don't. Many say that about me, as remember, that's also my name, Mars. But just because we've done it before doesn't mean we're not nervous and excited about doing it again. But wind gusts could send the spacecraft into a dangerous tumble during descent, or the parachutes could get tangled. A dust storm like the one that enveloped Mars this past summer could hamper Mars Insight's ability to generate solar power. A leg could buckle, the arm could jam. So I don't know why they didn't try to come up with new technologies, since it cost $1 billion to figure it out so that these things could be overcome using those basic tools. Important tools, but basic tools. And again, to generate solar power, use the dust storms with the electrostatic electricity that it charges in them to help be able to collect that from the solar panels if and where there were particles so it could help. So when the storms end, it would store enough power in order to kick the thing back on or periodically send its bleeps, you know, like how they sort of kind of lost opportunity there. So again, that's kicking a dead horse. But that's just my opinion also. But the tensest time for the flight controllers in Pasadena, California, the 6 minutes from the time the spacecraft hits Mars's atmosphere to touchdown. They'll have jars of peanuts on hand, a good luck tradition dating back to 1964's successful Ranger 7 moon mission. I'm sure there's a story there behind that, especially with peanuts, because everything's nuts. But Mars Insight will enter Mars's atmosphere at supersonic, as we heard earlier, 12,300 miles per hour, relying on its white nylon parachute and a series of engine firings to slow down enough for a soft upright landing on Mars's Elysium Planitia, a sizable equatorial plain west of the Tharsis Bulge and the Tharsis volcanoes, depending what type of mindset you want to have in looking at this craziness on Mars's surface. Because it all applies. Am I saying anything untrue? But Hoffman hopes that the landing spot is like a Walmart parking lot in Kansas. The flatter the better so the lander doesn't tip over, ending the mission, and so the robotic arm can set the science instruments down. Mars Insight, short for Interior Exploration using Seismic Investigations, Geodesy, and Heat Transport, will rest close to the ground. Its top deck barely a yard or meter above the surface. Once its twin circular solar panels open, the lander will occupy the space of a large car. If NASA gets lucky, a pair of briefcase-sized satellites trailing InSight, since their joint May liftoff, could provide near-live updates during the lander's descent. There's an 8-minute lag in communications between Earth and Mars. The experimental dual CubeSats, dubbed Wall-E and Eve, ain't that cute, from the 2008 animated movie, will zoom past Mars and remain in perpetual orbit around the Sun, their technology demonstration complete. If Wall-E and Eve are mute, landing news will come from NASA orbiters at Mars, just not as quickly. The first pictures of the landing site should start flowing shortly after touchdown. It will be at least 10 weeks before the science instruments are deployed, and another several weeks for the heat probe to bury into Mars, up to 16 feet. But the mission is designed to last one full Martian year, the equivalent of 2 Earth years. With landing day so close to Thanksgiving, many of the flight controllers will be eating turkey at their desk on the holiday. Hoffman expects his team will wait until Monday to give full and proper thanks. Yeah, I bet. But here's from another updated article again from November 23rd. I just want to give this all out, for the extra bits and pieces of information that these reports give, because it's very important for the mission, again, that cost $1 billion. That's about to land on the surface of Mars. Again, listeners to this show could appreciate that are looking for the subsurface illegals and other advantages. So by the staff writers from JPL, Pasadena, from November 23rd, yesterday, Mars Insight spacecraft on course for Mars touchdown. So the Monday after Thanksgiving, November 26th, the spacecraft is well on track for a soft touchdown. But it's not going to be a relaxing weekend of turkey leftovers, football, and shopping for the Mars Insight mission team. Engineers will be keeping a close eye on the stream of data indicating Mars Insight's health and trajectory, and monitoring Martian weather reports to figure out if the team needs to make any final adjustments in preparation for landing. Landing on Mars is hard. It takes skill, focus, and years of preparation, said Thomas Zurbuchen, Associate Administrator for the Science Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters in Washington. Keep in mind that our ambitious goal is to eventually send humans to the surface of the moon and then Mars. Yes, but listeners to this show know and appreciate, or really don't appreciate, that it's on a turtleneck pace speed policy control agenda campaign that does not benefit we the people, or, might I say, we the people's Space Force.
And here from this bridge to space, our nation will return to the moon, and we will put American boots on the face of Mars.
But I digress. I know that our incredible science and engineering team, the only one in the world to have successfully landed spacecraft on the Martian surface, will do everything that they can to successfully land Mars Insight on the red planet. So will Elon Musk, Zurbuchen. Just saying. But Mars Insight, the first mission to study the deep interior of Mars, blasted off from Vandenberg Air Force Base in Central California on May 5th of 2018. Isn't that funny and a coincidence to some, maybe, that is also the beginning of when Martian Revelation came back through time and has been airing ever since. Nothing's coincidence. And it has been an uneventful flight to Mars, and engineers like it that way. They will get plenty of excitement when Mars Insight hits the top of the Martian atmosphere at 12,300 miles an hour and slows down to 5 miles an hour, about the human jogging speed, before his 3 legs touch down on the Martian soil. That extreme deceleration has to happen in just under 7 minutes. There's a reason engineers call landing on Mars 7 minutes of terror, said Rob Grover, Mars Insight's entry descent and landing lead. And we can't joystick the landing, so we have to rely on the commands we pre-program into the spacecraft. We spent years testing our plans, learning from other Mars landings, and studying all the conditions Mars can throw at us. And we're going to stay vigilant till Mars Insight settles into its home on the Elysium Planitia region. One way engineers may be able to conform quickly what activities Mars Insight has completed during those 7 minutes of terror is that the experiment CubeSat mission known as the Mars Cube 1 relays the Mars Insight data back to the Earth in near real time during their flyby on November 26th. Again, we're talking about Wally and Eve again, the two dual CubeSats. And their radios have already been past their first deep space test. So all is a go. But just by surviving the trip so far, the two Marco satellites have made a giant leap for CubeSats, said Ann Marion, a Marco systems engineer based at JPL. And now we are gearing up for the Marco's next test, serving as a possible model for a new kind of interplanetary communications relay. But if all goes well, the Marcos may take a few seconds to receive and format the data before sending it back to Earth at the speed of light. This would mean that engineers at JPL and another team at Lockheed Martin Space in Denver would be able to tell what the lander did during EDL approximately 8 minutes after Mars Insight completes its activities. Without Marco, Mars Insight's team would need to wait several hours for engineering data to return via the primary communications pathways, which relays to NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Mars Odyssey Orbiter. Once engineers know that the spacecraft has touched down safely in one of several ways, they have to confirm the milestone and that Mars Insight solar arrays have deployed properly. Then the team could settle into the careful 3-month-long process of deploying the science instruments. But landing on Mars is exciting, but scientists are looking forward for the time after Mars Insight lands, said Lori Glaze, acting director of the Planetary Science Division at NASA headquarters. Once Insight is settled on the red planet and its instruments are deployed, it will start collecting valuable information about the structure of Mars's deep interior, information that will help us understand the formation and evolution of all rocky planets, including the one we all call home. Again, that's a big raise of speculation I call total bullshit. You're not going to be able to answer those main hard questions. Let's solve the other main ones first. 1, are there indeed any subsurface illegals, and are they home active? 2, is there any volcanic tectonic availability data being picked up to show and prove that it is indeed volcanic activity? But the article concludes that previous missions haven't gone more than skin deep at Mars, added Sue Schmeeker, the Mars Insight mission's deputy principal investigator at JPL. Insight scientists can't wait to explore the heart of Mars. Yes, the beating heart of Mars. The living heart of Mars. That's quite an interesting statement. I got to tell you all, though, that I think it would have been pretty cool if it landed today, right on Showtime, man, even during when the show is live. That would have been good to cover that event. But that's okay. It'll still be out there. We know it's going down. We'll see the pretty pictures soon enough after success, supposedly. And that would be good. It's always nice to get new pretty pictures. The Mars Insight landing is set to occur at about 3 p.m. Eastern Time, or 12 p.m. Pacific Time. So that's going to be something to watch. We'll see how it goes down, pun intended. Now, regarding to another Mars mission, the Mars Rover 2020, NASA picks an ancient Martian river delta for the 2020 rover to touch down. And NASA has chosen Jezero Crater as landing site for its upcoming Mars 2020 rover mission after a 5-year search during which details of more than 60 candidate locations on the red planet were scrutinized and debated by the mission team and the planetary science community. Again, I say they should have landed at Cydonia, but we know that's the radioactive taboo, pun intended. I also had a couple spots, like I said, a week or two ago. Valles Marineris would have been a good one, or Ganges, Chasma, and even a few others. They did hit on the Valles Marineris aspect, though, which was good because that also is a common sense idea. But the rover mission is scheduled to launch in July of 2020 as NASA's next step in exploration of the red planet. It will not only seek signs of ancient habitable conditions and past microbial life, but the rover will also collect rock and soil samples and store them in a cache on the planet's surface. And I say it's a waste of time. You're right. It will not only seek signs of ancient habitable conditions, meaning what? It will only be seeking signs of possible ancient habitable conditions, which means only seeking signs of possible life. Now, mind you, not detecting life. It has nowhere in their minds to even do. And that's what people get so upside down about what the relevancy is to the wording and to the accuracy of what's really going on with these missions. It is not to detect life. Yeah, that's right. That's why we want on board Dr. Gil Levin's controlled labeled release experiments, life detection experiments on board. But as we all know, listeners to this show could appreciate, but yet not appreciate, the blackballing of Dr. Gil Levin from 1976, when his experiments aboard the Viking landers, both 4,500 miles apart, landed on the surface in 1976 again, performed and replicated the experiments and the findings thereof, which both detected life, not just signs of life, but life. And they blackballed Dr. Gil Levin for years, making him say to the public that he didn't discover life, but he discovered possible signs of life. Notice the wording, possible signs of life. That's all they're looking for. They will not put on Dr. Gil Levin's controlled labeled release experiments to this very day. And I really want to start up the petition again in order to have the president and Mike Pence, as well as Congress, speak about this and the act and force NASA to place these experiments on board, along with the percolator experiment tester as well, not in the same compartments, both with microscopes.
Well, Gary, let's just look at how this actually works. Science isn't done by petitions. Science isn't done by, the president telling NASA, you got to put this experiment on board. That's not the way it's done. So what you don't want is that, the people on the streets who are not particularly expert in the chemistry of looking for life on Mars, that they, force them to do an experiment, which is in fact the wrong experiment. That's all I'd say. Let me just simply reiterate, the people that decide what's going to go on a Mars mission, right? Again, it's not decided by vote. It's not decided by, a certain small group of people. It's decided by the NASA scientists who have proposed the mission, who are qualified to say, hey, look, we're looking for evidence of life. What's the best way to do that on the basis of what we've done in the past and what the technology allows us to do today? And the same is true for life detection experiments. So, I just think that these guys know what they're doing. Yeah, you might want to soup it up. That's one thing you could do. The other thing you couldn't do in 1975 is just put a microscope on board. It simply wasn't technologically capable.
But it is now. We have that capability now.
You could do it now. Yes. Well, I don't disagree with any of that. Everybody wants the answer. It's not limited to a small group of people, and it's certainly not limited to people outside NASA. But nobody's trying to avoid finding life in space, of course. Why would they want to keep that discovery quiet?
Well, I don't know, the telling question for all these years.
So the idea that NASA would cover up the existence of life on Mars is crazy. I can't think of any reason why they would do that. If you're talking about something you need a microscope to see. But, one thing is if you see a whole bunch of them and they're moving around, and if you come back later and, some are gone and new ones have been made, if there's some sort of, reproduction in Darwinian evolution, that's really the thing. If there's some sort of, reproduction in Darwinian evolution, that's really the thing. Then you would say, okay, at this point, no conclusive evidence of any life beyond Earth. It isn't to say it isn't there, but we haven't found it yet, not in a convincing way. Gil Levin aside, his experiment didn't convince the rest of his science team. And you can say maybe he got a bad deal there, and maybe he did, but it didn't convince the rest of them. And it doesn't convince scientists today either. Most of the ones I've talked to are still very skeptical about those Viking lander results. So I think that they ought to put the most sensitive tests they can to look for
Detect
biology, right? Biology.
Go.
That's it. And maybe replicating his test is the way to go, but it's not guaranteed. At least from my point of view, it's not entirely sure that that's the best approach anymore. That was the approach 40 years ago. That technology has gone way beyond what it was in 1975, and the same is true for life detection experiments. So I think Gil Levin made some interesting comments about the capabilities of those Viking landers that plopped down onto the surface of our little ruddy buddy back in the mid-1970s. Most of the members of the science team thought that it hadn't proved the existence of life. You could argue about the label police experiment and all that stuff. But the thing that I think convinced the team that there wasn't biology there was the fact they didn't find any organic compounds.
We did now.
All right. But it turns out that the sensitivity of the experiment wasn't the greatest. So it's an open question. And it could very well be that there's life on Mars, maybe a greater probability that there once was life on Mars. But we'll only find out by doing more experiments. That's it. And maybe replicating his test is the way to go.
All right, so that's great. You're in agreement then that with a souped-up then version of a modern-day Dr. Gil Levin's light detection control label release experiment would be beneficial on those rovers. So just so you people are realizing that what they're sending up there in 2020 is not to look for actual life, okay? NASA and the European Space Agency are studying future mission concepts to retrieve the samples and return them to Earth. So this landing site sets the stage for the decade of Mars exploration. I already said, and they already know what can be done with those caches. Send them up to rendezvous with a probe that ESA and Russia is sending to Phobos around that same time, because they're going to be collecting organisms, yes, organisms, from the surface of Phobos and return them to the Earth. So why not rendezvous these caches instead of leaving them there for an even yet more turtleneck pace speed mission, wasting millions and billions of our taxpaying dollars and still pushing the year far, far ahead for us to actually put any boots on Mars. Now, mind you, this is not the same type of American boots that Vice President Pence mentioned about putting American boots on the face of Mars. That's military. We need something more visionary to get there. But why not? Send it up there to rendezvous, save some time and maybe us even some money, test out some technology, blast the caches off the surface up to Phobos to rendezvous with their orbiter, which will be collecting its own specimen again from Phobos. And then let them and our mission co-jointly collaborated return to Earth, where these things can be studied in Earth orbit, like on the ISS, not just simply brought back to Earth until it's deemed safe. But anyway, let's get back to the article. The landing site at Jezero Crater offers geologically rich terrain with landforms reaching as far back as 3.6 billion years old. That could potentially answer important questions in planetary evolution and astrobiology, said Thomas Zurbuchen, Associate Administrator for NASA's Science Mission Directorate. You know, it's when they give the words like potentially answer for these big astronomical questions that there's no way, again, that these missions could come to those conclusions of what Mr. Zurbuchen is really trying to throw out there in left field for us. Let's stay with the facts and the truth. But getting samples from this unique area will revolutionize how we think about Mars and its ability to harbor life. So we're sending people there, Zurbuchen. Elon Musk, for instance. He has enough balls to do it. I just wish NASA had enough balls to support him and we the people. We see what you're really about.
But nobody's trying to avoid finding life in space, of course. Why would they want to keep that discovery quiet?
But Jezero Crater is located on the western edge of Ascites Planitia, a giant impact basin just north of the Martian equator. Western Ascites presents some of the oldest and most scientifically interesting landscapes Mars has to offer. Well, it depends on what you clarify as most interesting landscapes that Mars has to offer. Remember, they won't dare even think of touchdown in Cydonia, But mission scientists believe the 28-mile-wide crater, once home to an ancient river delta, could have collected and preserved ancient organic molecules and other potential signs of microbial life from the water and sediments that flowed into the crater billions of years ago. You see, look for the potential signs of microbial life. Just like Zurbuchen looking to potentially answer the important questions in planetary evolution and astrobiology, astronomical questions that's far beyond the scope of these primitive missions. Just saying. They're insulting our intelligence. But in addition, the material carried into the delta from the large watershed may contain a wide variety of minerals from inside the outside of the crater. But the geologic diversity that makes Jezero so appealing to Mars 2020 scientists also makes it a challenge for the team's entry, descent, and landing engineers. Along with the massive nearby river delta and small crater impacts, the site contains numerous boulders and rocks to the east, cliffs to the west, and depressions filled with aeolian bed forms, which is wind-derived ripples and sand that could trap a rover in several locations. The Mars community has long coveted the scientific value of sites such as Jezero Crater, and a previous mission contemplated going there, but the challenges with safely landing were considered prohibitive, said Ken Farley, project scientist for the Mars 2020 at NASA's JPL. But what was once out of reach is now conceivable. I agree, thanks to the 2020 engineering team and advances in Mars entry, descent, and landing technologies. Yes, but they will not add on the technologies and the benefits of Dr. Gil Levin's controlled labor release experiments, okay, which detects life, as well as a percolator experimenter. Separate chambers, again, both with microscopes. But this allowed the science community to consider more challenging landing sites. The sites of greatest scientific interest led NASA, of course, away from Cydonia, I'll add, to add a new capability called terrain relative navigation. TRN will enable the sky crane, descent stage, the rocket-powered system that carries the rover down to the surface to avoid hazardous areas. The site selection is dependent upon extensive analysis and verification testing of the TRN capability. A final report will be presented for an independent review board at NASA headquarters in the fall of 2019. Nothing has been more difficult in robotic planetary exploration than landing on Mars, said Zurbuchen. Right, but I'll tell you what's been more difficult, Zurbuchen, trying to answer the astronomical questions you like to imply that these things could potentially help answer. But that's okay, right? But the Mars 2020 engineering team has done a tremendous amount of work to prepare us for this decision. The team will continue its work to truly understand the TRN system and the risks involved, and we will review the findings independently to reassure that we have maximized our chances for success. And selecting a landing site this early allows the rover drivers and science operations team to optimize their plans for exploring Jezero Crater once the rover is safely on the ground. Using data from NASA's fleet of Mars orbiters, they will map the terrain in greater detail and identify regions of interest, places with the most interesting geological features. For example, right, like Cydonia would be that prime candidate. That's most famous, that has the most interesting geological features. But listeners to this show could appreciate, and other fellow independent Mars researchers alike would state there's a lot more interesting archaeological features, for example, where the Mars 2020 rover could collect the best science samples. But we know that ain't going to happen.
But nobody's trying to avoid finding life in space, of course. Why would they want to keep that discovery quiet?
Maybe we should start a petition for that, too. Bob Williams also had that idea. I think it's time to put that into fruition as well. I mean, why not? It'll be noted and marked in time. So that being said, it's going to be interesting to discuss some of these issues with our guests, Andrew Currie and Keith Laney, coming up. So as listeners again to this show can appreciate, the motto to this show, pack 'em and smoke 'em, because you're definitely going to need 'em.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends. The L&M Radio Network is the #1 network in the land.
That's a big statement.
Yes, it is. We have the best host with the best guests and the best information.
I agree with that.
As you should. L&M is surrounded by some of the top names in the business.
Of course.
And now you can take advantage by advertising on our station and or shows, or just sponsoring a specific show.
Really?
So go to our website, www.lnmradionetwork.com, and see for yourself what we have to offer. And then contact us at sales@lnmradionetwork.com, or see our contact info on our website, www.radionetwork.com.
Yeah, that was a strange song. So dance, get up, everybody. Start rocking your ass off. This is Gary Leger, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian, and you're listening to, obviously, the Martian Revelation that's upon you all again now. And again, we are back for a part 2 with our guest from last week, Andrew Currie. You know, artist extraordinaire. Let's just sum that up. I'm not going to get into all bios and that tonight, as the listeners pretty much to this show who's listening most likely know who our guests are. And if you don't, again, go back to the archives, and it's okay. Just listen in and keep listening anyway. You'll learn who they are. And remember, they're only heard through the shield of L&M, LNMradionetwork.com. Please hit subscribe. Please donate. And please donate to the Martian Revelation. Which reminds me, go to www.thefacesofmars.com and scroll on down. Oh, look at that. What happened? You see a nice big red, white, and blue button with stars. Says donate. Please help donate, because with your support, you are the resistance. We will make our fate and make the Martian Revelation our reality. So again, let's try this for part two. I believe we have our guests on with us, and thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, Gary.
How you doing, man?
You on? You sound loud and clear. Is Keith on with us?
Yeah, sure am. How you doing?
All right, bro. Again, thank you for being on. And again, wow, say this show was meant to be had. Last week definitely went in a different direction. Obviously, it is what it is. But I wasn't the initiator or the catalyst. For our over here was, and that's the beauty of this. And I don't even want to get into that tonight. We have so many other avenues to cross. But guys, do you feel it? What? Your balls knotting up, man? I mean, curiosity. The Mars Insight is on its way to look for the subsurface illegals. What do you guys think about that?
We'll find out if that's a volcano on our shamans soon.
Oh, you say we'll find out?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out. If that thing's rumbling, we'll hear it. Inside will hear it.
Oh, that's the thing, though. Will they let us hear it? Because
that's a question right there. That's the crux of the matter right there.
Back to that, we want to put all our faith and trust in them, but it's just like everything else. It's so policy controlled, agenda Brookings as it was, I believe. But we could go there later in this show, because I think it's very important when we're looking at this all and seeing how that these missions are actually going there, not to look for life, actually, because you heard Mr. Shostak, and he said that's what it is. What they want to search for evidence of Darwinian evolution, acclimates their definition of life, to which would be scientifically worthy. I find that ridiculous. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's pretty out there, isn't it?
Yeah, especially again, what Dr. Gil Levin,
Well, that's the only thing that's ever been sent that really looked for life. All the missions, they say, look for life, look for life, look for life. Curiosity, look for life. Opportunity, look for life. Spirit, look for life. There's not a life-seeking instrument on any of them.
But what does each mission state specifically?
Look for signs of ancient life, yes.
They look for possible
They want to look for rocks.
Yeah, but yet they want us to think that those missions, since they can't answer that shit, that crap, that, you know what I'm saying, that it can answer the grant, like Zerbuckin, he keeps trying to say, hey, this thing's worth it. It might help us look for possible answers for how rocky planets, of the formation of the solar system. Really?
Well, I mean, we really do need a seismometer on Mars. I mean, nothing so far we've had that measures anything like that. And so, it'll fill a role if we get to hear it,
Well, right. And if they show us even visual, not just the rumbling noise, but the actual grass from the little needle moving around as it was, so to measure and determine the movements, because that would help us explain, hey, put two and two together, that's just another volcanic plume. But again, because now why is it that's so hard to see? They got mainstream, huh? Someone try talking.
Not here.
Wow, that was weird. That was weird. But anyway, it would help us determine, again, what is above pun intended, the base there of Arcia Mars. I'm hearing double of myself. That's odd. But so in that regard, even but people want to believe the mainstream scientific view. It's a cloud with particles, atmospheric, though it's going over one, not even the tallest of the Tharsis pyramid mound of of the volcanoes. Let's just say.
Gary, their whole explanation for that is nonsense anyway.
Seasonal.
Yeah, seasonal orographic cloud effect. And seasonal being like they're saying it only happens in the Martian winter, but as I showed you when I was on your show last month, we got pictures of it in the summer with the plume, in the winter with the plume, and not on consecutive years. Sometimes it's not there, sometimes it is.
Right.
So that's not seasonal. Seasonal means it comes with a season.
That's why at first I was seeing. Based on what I seen, you helped me see that there was an offset year where that was also going on. Because I was like, what, every 3 years? What's making of our years? Every 3 Earth years, it's spewing out on Mars. Why? But then, no. Then just one small piece of data changes so much, doesn't it? But yet, look how low res it is. Why ain't High Rise zooming in on this? I'm sure it is. It already knows. Why ain't they kicking out with the data if it's volcanism or not? I think it goes against their mainstream models. And that's why I say we have to be forced to make petitions to make common sense science applicable.
Well, I don't particularly think it's like a volcanic eruption as in lava spewing out and side of the mountain caving away.
Something. Right.
It's more along sort of like how Yellowstone is, where it's venting a lot of steam and vapor, and it's having something like that going on there. And I think that's quite plausible, and it's been reported in that area for a long time. And we know that the nighttime infrared shows that the pits and fissures on that side of Arcia Mons are generally warmer than the. They try to explain it by infiltration of atmospheric air into the loose porous rock, but it's better explained by moist air rising from underneath and coming out through porous rock. But
like
the thing
is the Earth.
Yeah, right. Just like geothermal.
So much.
Yeah, if you've got a thermal springs down there and there's heat's rising from it, Mars is a lot colder and a lot drier than Earth. So it would, it wouldn't exactly take something to be boiling to have, have.
Well, you say cold now, mind you, everyone. At nights there are times and seasons where Mars is 70 to 80 degrees around its equatorial regions, and God knows what benefits that brings in the Valles Marineris system.
Well, Valles Marineris clouds up a lot too. So like the plume that was coming off Mars.
Pressures makes potential air and liquid water become a more possible possibility.
Well, it makes you wonder. It makes what kind of atmospheric data do we really have on Mars, and can we detect minute changes in the atmosphere of Mars?
That's Mars 2020. NASA's Mars rover 2020 should have definitely picked there as a prime candidate, more prime than where it wants to go. I say Cydonia prime would have been the prime choice, pun intended, but we all know that there again, what's going on there.
Oh, yeah.
But at least Valles Marineris. But then, no, what if it encounters the water? Oh, my gosh, what if it detects an atmosphere to where it's possible? Millibars are right. Everything's just right for us to take off a helmet, maybe. Or potential oxygen. You saw the movie Stranded. It's a scientific fact that if there is present life on Mars, and Dr. Brandenburg stated this even years ago on this show, you may remember, where if life exists on Mars, the best candidate would be, because of the depth, the pressure, and all that, would be the Valles Marineris. And you know what? I've seen nothing to this day that would dispute that. Now, looking for past evidence of life and even present, I still say Cydonia. Viking was still full of nasties, especially seeing one of the nasties with one of the eyes following them across the sky. But that's my opinion. So they landed where? In Currie, not too far away. They had to put it down. So and then other, and again, 4,500 miles apart for the other one. Where was that? Utopia. So, if I'm not mistaken, please refresh my memory. But they both tests concluded evidence detected of life, not possible signs of life. It detected evidence of definite life. And, all since then, the policy changed to possible signs of life. So why not land somewhere where that possibility is more probable, especially when I'm sure things could be put on board to test millibars and all that crap, and any even oxygen levels. I mean, I want to see all these basic things aboard these crafts. I mean, to determine this.
No, well, you would think they would send. You'd think they'd send a meteorological station on every craft. You'd think they would have some rudimentary life detecting system on every craft. You would think they would have that. You would think they'd even have a microphone, but nope.
Right. I want to hear the winds. Right. I want to hear the winds blow.
Right. Well, look, that's a key detective sense of ours is our hearing, and I mean, how we not? You could be standing there and not see anything and hear hammering from a mile off.
I was just going to say that. We might not need the Mars Insight to find the subsurface illegals because we might hear it going clong, 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 for all we know. I mean,
hear them playing drums off in the distance or something,
Well, exactly. And that's the beauty of this thing because, there's so much hope. There's so much hope. And I can see the stall tactics they're doing. I can see they're selling us out to international collaborators who are really out for the agenda to destroy this nation anyway. I mean, it's like that's why the turtleneck snail pace speeding. It was based on those agendas for the people that funded them before. They're not out for we the people, and I believe we do have a right to sign petitions, to make demands of where science needs to go, especially for the benefit of we the people Space Force. Now, what do you guys think about that? Andrew, what do you think about the words of the Vice President, for instance, months ago, stating that we were going to put American boots on the face of Mars? Those exact words.
Yeah. Well,
what do you think about that?
Yeah. No, I know. And you played the clip last week a few times, and it's
I play it every week, it seems.
Yeah, I know you do. But no, man, it's so apropos, right? It's just like you're duh. We're gonna do another little bit of French there. But no, it's one of the things that when we're talking about these missions is that there's a steady march. I know what you're saying. There's a stall. It's like, oh, we're blind. This spaceship can't sniff. Oh, this spaceship can't hear. Oh, like what Keith was saying.
Yeah, but that's deliberate. That's deliberate on their part. They're leaving shit out, again, crap out, and deciding what should be put on there or not. And none of them have had ever a life detection experiment put on board since Dr. Gillivan's controlled label release experiments. And the last proposal, in fact, that he gave, even though, remember, he's 94, he's still plugging with this crap. Yeah. They sent it home to him in a cab. Now, what? And it's like they didn't even want it to register that he submitted it through the... have to get it noted through the post office, but anyone can pay a cabbie a few bucks. Here, bring this back. We don't want no record of it. Why?
Well, it's still, they're scared to death. They're scared to death of, and I will get into this later, but more attention being put on Mars. I mean, there was a study done fairly recently by a research group out of Seattle called the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. They're in Seattle, Washington. And they did this study, I think it was earlier this year, it might have been last year. And they basically talked about if we colonize Mars. They did this big study saying that it has to become an independent colony or series of colonies, independent from Earth. So when you made that comment just a little bit earlier about there's agendas going on, like bigger corporation. You didn't say quite corporations, but you said bigger groups. I think you're right. I think that there are deals being made to go to Mars and divvy up the place for I don't know between who. And Elon Musk is in the middle of it, Gary. In this document by the Blue Marble Space Institute, they used 3 treaties to sort of come up with their ideas for developing laws for future colonies. They use the Antarctic Treaty System, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and the Outer Space Treaty, which you talked about last week. And basically, they talk about what would be the effects of colonization. Now, get this, guys.
Well, at least you remember last week.
Well, Gary, one of the really interesting things in this study is they talk about preserving great tracts of land. Now, listen to this: for scientific, aesthetic, historical, cultural, environmental, spiritual, and a variety of other purposes. It's like, what the heck? Spiritual? Okay, historical.
Might
Okay,
as
so
well just build a wall.
What's that?
Might as well just build a wall.
Well,
the space wall.
Yeah, and but what do they want to protect? Like, what are archaeological sites, perhaps? Like you said, potential places that show life. They're scared to death.
Or like even Hoagland said many years on my show years ago, again on Pick Up the Bones, 2 months before I revealed this crap, the fact of the matter, Mars is a foreign planet. They're sending a reconnaissance, military term, to study a foreign planet. In essence, then he goes, Gary, can you read between the lines what that says? I said, yes. Where's the illegals? And he said, yes. That was the official wording, even like NASA officially terms the face of Cydonia, the face of Mars, but does nothing to attribute it as it's a mountain, it's a massive, it's a hill. They can't make up their mind what it is, but it's not a face, but they officially label it the face. Code. Yeah. Mike Pence says officially, from a Brookings standpoint, we'll get into later, I hope, guys, that because he fits the bill and position, I'm sure you understand and agree, I hope, but that he states exactly we're going to put American boots where? On the official term, all right, remember, like NASA's official, the face of Mars, which they do, it's all over, it leads back to them. But he says the face of Mars. We're going to put American boots on the face of Mars. That's direct code that slams that. We're being led to something because we have to be led to something, and they need boots now. It's coming to the time. It doesn't matter suppression no more. Like Vice President Pence said, who's now the chairman of the National Space Council, he made deals with and signed contracts with the Department of Defense to open up their space situational awareness books. I love that term, which means what? The DOD, classified data being given out to the public for the basis, and to others for the basis of not just standing up our Space Force, but being and accomplishing what we need to do. We have to know what's going on before we actually put these American boots on the face of Mars. So therefore, these space situational awareness books, and what he was telling us is basically he opened the doors to disclosure. He told us disclosure is coming. In fact, he just gave us disclosure. He told us where they're going to officially land. And he didn't call it a damn mesa or a hill or a mountain. And they're bringing them 60s, not flags and flowers and love. I'm just saying, because it's military. That was part of the spiel to build up Trump and the Space Force, where he said this. From a Brookings point of view, it's kind of funny. We may have a Space Force. We'll develop another one. You know, people think he was talking nonchalantly, jokingly. No, I think he was trying to tell us in disclosure, hey, we have a Space Force. We're going to develop another one. Another one? Why? Because he just said we may have a Space Force. You know, maybe we don't. I mean, you know, it's like when he said, does anyone here not wish me to sign this? Because you're going to be really upset if you don't want me to sign this. He was talking to us, not to his people, because people know him as the firing guy, right? No, that's how this disclosure is so in your face now. And that's the thing. If that's that in our face, why aren't they doing anything with NASA's policy, who thinks that they're in control, that they will be in control? Look, they want to put us on to Mars when we're dead, guys. All right? That's just the reality of it. But by then, our nation would have been no more. It would be the beast system, Iron Jaw system. No one would go to Mars, right? Why? What does the beast have to fear? What does he know about Mars that we don't? I'm not a stupid man. And I had the balls to come out and say what I think's going on. Because it's pretty obvious. Why would they need our boots? Why? To come out now. And doesn't that fit Brookings? Hey, total suppression. But then there comes a time when we have to be told. Why? Because obviously we could have just be told outright, but we'll stretch it as far as we go, try to acclimate you all as best as possible, desensitize you to some of the potential realities that's going to happen to you and upon them. But we're going there. There's a difference. And that's the beauty of this. Therefore, if that could be at least hypothetically thought of, guys, why then are they allowing NASA to go at this turtleneck snail pace speed? And why aren't they enforcing what, I didn't embarrass myself when I made Dr. Gill's campaign. That was just a trial run in the let know. But we need networking. We need people with balls, friends and frenemies alike. All right, because it benefits us all. And I know, Keith, thank you for your support there in that. You at least, you see the value in that. But needless to say, I wasn't able to happen. I didn't have enough networking and everything. And that's not an embarrassing thing, because at least I had the balls to do something. Where others, well, why didn't they? If they're so out for the truth, I mean, this is why we're here. This is why Keith Laney's here. This is why Andrew Currie's here, amongst other reasons in time. I think we're going to find out. Handy. But still, what do you guys think about that potential reality? Why would they not force NASA to take these things when we have to know this? I mean, unless you think something's going to happen and NASA and all their plans are going to be bypassed. I mean, I'd really like to know your guys' thoughts on it, even hypothetical. We freely speculate on this show.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Gary. I saw Brandenburg, via YouTube, but he was doing a secret space conference presentation a couple of years ago. And up on the screen, like one of his slides, he flashes Han Solo and he says, "Hey, everybody, just because if there are beings like more intelligent than us or that have advanced technology, it doesn't mean that they're all that friendly." And he made this comment, in the conference, he goes, "It's a pretty dangerous place out there." And then he just left it there. He didn't go any further. He flashed on to some science and more Mars pictures. But that little swashbuckling cowboy Han Solo was up there with his guns ablaze, or not blazing, but holstered or in his hand. I can't remember what the
famous pose.
Yeah, the famous pose. And he kind of, and Dr. Brandenburg kind of, well, you've had him on, and he can be playful and he kind of acts like he's an incredibly intelligent and genius kind of dude, right?
Oh,
and
very.
And he kind of bounces around playfully.
Sometimes I miss the little cues from him, because I tend to cut over him a lot. But he's a physicist type mind, and he just keeps running and running. It's hard, I mean, I'm not even at the caliber really to discuss those things. I mean, I love the guy, and he's definitely a friend and a fan of the show and of me, and I appreciate that because he sees the value of the Martian revelation. And I could add something to that comment that he said to where he left off at, to where he said this to me. The good news is that they're like us. The bad news is that they're like us. So like you're saying, out there is a pretty tough place.
Yeah, and then that would explain a lot of what Trump is doing and what Pence is talking about, right? And what you're saying is that, hey, they're not going to bring olive branches up there. They're going to bring something quite different.
Yeah, space M60s. The new technology, Trump said this other developed, Space Force that we may already have, that he hinted at, would be bringing out new weaponry, even for our troops on Earth. That we're going to be, science fiction is going to be science coming out to science fact. Those were his exact words.
Gary,
now, isn't that interesting? Now, that's something you would need, literally to put boots there, but also to meet a potential foe. And that brings in a lot of issues, and again, of the subsurface illegals, and where the Mars Insight was launched from Vandenberg. So all missions launched from there, all pretty much fairly tightly have classified aspects to them, especially those with high security, and especially to go there to do some probing for the subsurface illegals, or, like Mr. Bernard says, or Zerbuckin, that this mission will help answer the formation of the solar system. Right. Let's just worry about the subsurface illegals and any volcanic tectonics or whatever else that you guys are really probing for, pun intended. There's lots of applications I can see they could possibly use that for. So it is interesting, guys.
Gary, do you remember 2 years ago, what are we in 18 or almost in, oh my gosh, we're almost in 19. But anyways, in 2 years ago.
No, but yeah, 2018 was supposed to be the year. It's supposed to be the year. I want that cup of wine.
Oh, I could use that right now.
In time.
It's always
That'll be more fully understood. But I understand it, and he knows I understand it.
And Gary, but 2 years ago, there was a... Cheers, bro. But 2 years ago, there was a... remember that guy? It was an army... He was a general, chief of staff general, Mark Milley, and he spoke to a bunch of young military officers. I think it was
an Air Force Academy or something like that, where he stated how we had to adapt, how we adapted since Civil War, Revolutionary Civil War, had to adapt to new mindsets like the African American, Black extremism and the changes we had to adapt so we could mold together, and then Vietnam, and then the other wars. And then he said, now you guys, basically, if I'm right here, if what you're referencing, he said, now we got to adapt and know that we're going to be fighting little green men.
Yes, exactly. And I know that the explanation is, well, the Russians tend to wear green khaki uniforms or something like that, or like
the Russians aren't little, they're big mofos. They can take care of themselves. They'll throw themselves to protect that nation. They helped us, remember, at one time, but it was to their benefit as well. So we weave.
So I mean, again, to sort of answer your, to kind of again freely speculate, what are these guys talking about? Like, what Keith, what do you think, man?
Oh man, look, Mars is a conquest. It's the next conquest.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's the next conquest. And if they're not going to, but if there's no one there to fight when they get there, we'll get there and fight each other over it. Mars doesn't.
Really? Who? Us American boots will go?
Sure. Why not? Do you think?
I think it's to prevent the Chinese, and I got another word for them, but I was told not to use it on this show. I don't mean about the people. I mean about the the Chinese government. They are that. And they're here out for blood. And they're going to the far side of the moon. They think they're going to be love and they're going to reach out to all of you or give you any truths? Bro, you have no idea the threat of China. Nope. Trump does. And that's why he's going to lead us. And not to be in NASA's hands. They already got NASA's secrets. Think about that. Think about that. So now, but here we're on the brink, because now the Space Force is going to be stood up. And the reality is, I'm glad you brought that up, Andrew, because of the fact of the matter, that's not too long in the time frame to the lead up for when Pence and Trump was going about there creating another one, campaign. And then months, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything's starting to... And notice how everyone didn't freak out who he said that to. And those in the audience, if we caught it, they caught it. They understood. They didn't run to the hills. They're already being taught and adapted to those concepts. Well, look, it's in police books on how they treat you if you come in contact. You don't think they're being taught even far many other guidelines?
Yeah. And Gary, the biggest human intelligence agency on this planet and the oldest, which is the Catholic Church. The Pope,
you know what? That might sound funny, but that's not funny. You're right.
The Pope himself said, and they don't do comedy. The bishops and the Pope, and all the way down
Oh,
through
they
the
sure
line.
don't. They like little boys and things of evil natures.
Well,
but King Jesus is going to deal with them.
Well, the comment made, Keith, remember it was, if we meet the Martians, we will baptize them if they ask.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Gary. This is the.
That reminds me of something from Enoch, about them wanting him to, appeal unto Yahweh on their benefit. And basically, and he felt for them. He was empathic to them, even knowing, they probably freaked him out. But he was empathic to them and, just loved learning everything he was learning and experiencing. If he could be the liaison, he did. But he got that door slammed shut hard on his ass real quick. Hey, no, there's no redemption. So therefore, and this is a possible dimension of the Martian revelation, I want to cover with an amazing pastor out of California named Joseph Terrell. There's a shout out to him. I can imagine what he thinks of me. That's probably why I haven't heard back. But maybe in time, the Lord will lead him to say, hey, it's a valid thing I want to have him on for. And it's very important because he speaks of these issues anyway. It's nothing far-fetched, especially with today's science and the things we can see, right, guys? I mean, it's in our face, pun intended, or faces, in other words, right? So therefore, what is the big threat of the church at saying that? Are they trying to take the decision away that therefore, if we take the context of Enoch on how the door was slammed shut on him, more, not just, the anger was shown at him a little. So basically, no, don't even go there, buddy. You're lucky to seeing all this crap, type of thing. But let them know, no, they're done. So maybe there's an aspect that Mars, yes. I believe it's higher than human intelligence that fashioned it, that sculpted it, that resided there. And there is one of Mr. Cellier's videos where I made some connections, but not the connection to where in the storyline it says where we now know that the builders of Cydonia were pre-fallen rebellious angels who built these constructs to represent God, their creator. But they were destroyed, that planet, and they were destroyed because of their rebellion against God, their creator, and maybe they're representing as a precursor of what could happen here upon the earth. Now, they use David Flynn in there and others, and of course our buddy over there who denies he never even knew them or barely remembers, but let's not go there, I digress. The evidence is out there. But the amazing point here is to make the connection of that possible reality. Now, guys, you got to admit, that certainly is a possible reality, isn't it? That it could be pre-rebellious angels, and that's part of the bigger fear factor. And, I mean, I don't know. Let's think. Keith, what do you think about that? I don't think it'll be too far-fetched for you, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I grasp all those concepts, and I've been a theological scholar for all my life. But the thing about this is that that's used a lot of times for the hysteria to keep people away from knowing certain things. But then again, not all meat is meat for everyone. Some people choke on a steak but can eat potatoes all day long.
Thus the Brookings policy of recommendations of suppression. But now we have to be told about it if they're coming out trying to tell us now they need our boots.
Right. Well, when you got a preacher up there going, well, it's all fallen angels and those are all demons and all that, man, it totally denies the history of humanity that was on a whole nother planet and a whole civilization. And all the archaeological knowledge and all the technical knowledge and everything that we could learn from them are abandoned for ignorance. And I can't stand for that.
Well, right. They're looking down at it.
That's the same kind of people who think the Earth is 6,000 years old, and so I'm not going to buy anything they say. So, you know what I mean? And now I believe in the same God that they profess to believe in. Okay, but I don't believe that. I don't believe it in science are at odds. I don't believe it in science are at odds. And if they do, then they're wrong.
Well, look, at least for the sake of it, from a eschatological point of view as well as scriptural one.
It's easy to say the Babylonians were demons too, and so let's just leave all their stuff buried. Don't go digging up anything and learn
Well,
anything.
well,
Don't learn their language. Don't learn their
Right.
culture. Don't learn anything about them. Because what they knew was worth nothing. That's the same thing as the Islamists tearing Palmyra up, and going taking sledgehammers to those great, big, huge, beautiful Assyrian lions.
If we forget who they were and who they are, it's real easy to become overcome and deceived by them again when they return.
Right.
But where I was going is that in the scriptures, he does state literally outright, we will see the Creator's handiwork in the heavens. Now that,
it is all over. Of course,
it's
all over. And we're not. None of us are denying any of that handiwork. You know that. When we see this, when you see the D&M pyramid,
right?
When you see the face staring up at you, the D&M pyramid, and many other things that you see on Mars, and some of the stuff you see on the other planets, the huge hexagon at the top of Saturn. At the top of Jupiter.
Yep.
Oh my.
Interesting.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah, and Gary. Sorry, Gary. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, you're good.
The very arrangement of the planets and their dance in the solar system, it's just so perfect. The moon that's just the right size to cover the sun, and vice versa.
Indeed.
You see what I'm talking about? These are the things that let you know that the creative hand was in here, was a really very high technology. And I happen to think that God is technology, because look at this. The highest knowledge in the universe is technology. It's not magic. If he waves his hand and it created, if he waved his hand and he created the universe, it did it with technology, man. It's just a technology we don't have an inkling of.
Right, but ultimately all of it comes from him, and
if we fly a helicopter, if we fly a helicopter and show our cell phone to a native in Amazonia, well, providing we don't get arrows shot through all of us, they're going to think we're God.
They'll bow down and worship you. But on that note, we're going to go take a break real quick. And, we'll be back in like 5 or 6 minutes. We'll ponder some dead memories. Obviously that's where we're going now because, again, the many dimensions of the Martian revelation and what grounds it covers. And I, freely speculate on this show amongst the realities of what all this entails. Because we're not getting all these answers from those who we would think and are paying for that should be getting us these answers. So it's not entirely our fault, is it? All right, but and on that note, still pack them and smoke them. You're going to need them. I'm going to.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Hello. My name is Seraphine Hurley, and I'm your new host here on Late Night in the Midlands. On Saturdays from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, Tripping the Void. Are you going to come on a trip with me? We're going to talk about all kinds of subjects, from cryptozoology to taboos, cultural and otherwise, as well as anything abnormal. So I encourage you to come on and take a trip with me. Are you ready? I know that I am.
visions in your name. Dead fingers in my veins. Dead memories in my eyes. Dead memories in my
Welcome back, everybody. This is Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, your host of the Martian Revelation, that's upon you all again now. And with our guests, Andrew Currie and Keith Laney. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking that this is a really increasingly incredible discussion to have. That should be included in the aspects of what it is that the world is shaping us toward, the Martian revelation, and what all that is really going to entail upon our reality. That's literally going to change our world, especially as the Space Force builds the infrastructure to not only put us in our boots there on Mars first, but to make it, the infrastructure based for the whole world to be able to follow based on that standard, not on the Chinese or the Russians or anyone else with any subversive un-American plans and agendas for a global dominancy. At least with Trump, you know, say what you want. There's a lot of American haters out there, but we are the beacon on what the future must be continued upon. You know, everyone, you see people fighting at our borders, you know, trying to come in now, being used by the UN to bring us down. But you know what? We'll turn it around. Because if I ever become president, let me tell you, I'll invite them in and they got instant jobs. They F up, they're out of here, and their families. But we will use them. Hey, you want to go to space? Put your boots on the face of Mars, become an innocent citizen. Start thinking smart. And Trump's thinking smart. For all we know, that's what they're thinking. Okay, we just started to see the cusp of what this dam that's breaking about this disclosures coming upon us of what the Martian revelation is. They need boots. They need to meet someone there to bring M60s. For what? To secure a beachhead, possibly, because Trump's warning was at the Earth of why we need this, our infrastructure, not just to protect us from the forces and nations here on Earth, but from the from the threat coming from deep space. So of course we would want to have a beachhead on Mars, but is there a connection with those or whatever is coming from deep space to come back to Mars? If it is, that's what the scene is. Or we're going to deal with who's there, maybe waiting for those to come back to Mars, then to come back to the Earth. And Keith, I think it was you that stated, you know, the Sumerians, because again, whether a lot of people want to accept it or not, there is consistencies. And where Lamu, Mars, was the planet where also Marduk, as well as many others, were either exiled to or just were in command of during certain of the constellational shifts, of which also shifted their powers, not just on Earth, but abroad. They called them Shars, or well, the Shar was its 1 year going around our sun. Its 3,600 year orbit was called a Shar. So I mean the whole processional cycle to the next age. These beings live so long that they would offer themselves kingship on the Earth, obviously on Mars. Keith, you brought this up because this is a story from them. Therefore, I think there's truth in it. And what did our government want when the Iraqi war started? One of the main things was to get in there and start grabbing artifacts. Why? I have a feeling it has to do with Mars, and why all of a sudden now there's a big rush to get many boots to be put on the face of Mars. I don't see any of this as being inconsistent with the reality of what I've seen and experienced while being alive and breathing and have a mind to think. Now, but what do you guys think? Maybe I'm out in left field, but I don't know. I think Keith brought a major part. So weren't they also attributed as being the fallen angels, who, those who from heaven to earth came, from space to earth came? Those were the same beings doing what they're doing up there on Mars. At least to that story. But who knows? There may be another side story. Because remember, we also got the tale of, like, Dr. Brandenburg's evidence of a war taking place on Mars and nukes being off. So how do we know they didn't come upon the indigenous Martians? And you see where I'm going? How broad our freely speculated mindset and imagination could take this.
Well, I mean, in Sitchin,
I think it's incredible.
In Sitchin, it was the Agigi were the inhabitants of Mars,
right?
And they rebelled against the Anunnaki, and the planet and them were destroyed. According to that. So, but I mean, that's going into mythologies and all to explain something that there may be archaeological evidence that we need to be looking at instead. You know what I mean?
A show talking about that, like Johnny Enoch, George Balabanis, believe it or not, even Dr. Moore Carlotto a little bit. I don't know if you guys caught that show, but that's very interesting to see where he's taken his research and work. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I've been watching him do that.
But isn't it amazing? It is going back to all these ancient myths and laws around the planet. Yeah. Mars seems to be somehow applied to this, if not directly, like the Sumerian case, therefore indirectly. Like our work and our, other colleague like George Haas and others that we've learned long ago about the bifurcated artistical nature of many of these features, or some of them in particular, that stands to reason that it's a position worthy to look at when we consider the Mesoamerican type glyphs in that style, the hominid feline as it was. That cannot just be a coincidence, but though that does not implicate who's who, it just implicates, okay, there had to be some connected mindset of a system being applied here. It just, that's like building pyramids all over the world, but yet no one's ever been to any other land to make consistent buildings. That's not natural.
Well, Gary, this is a perfect time to go to something that Keith and I fashioned for you, and I mentioned it last week. And there's a reason, there's a little pathway here for a couple of different reasons, but we basically made a little graphic novel short for you, and it was like it's Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving. We come on the show. You're gracious enough to have us, and the network.
We wanted to too.
Yeah, and we wanted to do something for you, and so. That's Can we take you through this story, man? Because it does relate to.
Tell the listeners all about it, or whoever's listening out there. But the show does have listeners. Trust me. But www.thefacesofmars.com. Scroll on down past the donate button. Don't forget to hit that later. Wink, wink. And also there's no guest information. They are them. They're here. We're here to conquer. And there's check out those images listed there, and you can click on them. They'll pop up pages where you can see them bigger.
Yeah. So that first image is the sort of first image of our little mini comic, our little mini graphic novel. And I'm going to describe the image of Gary. Sort of let you guys all know where to go. And if you listen to this in the archives, and you should, or if you do see a YouTube version of this, these images will pop up. But just for you now live, if you can go to it on your device, it'd be great. Otherwise, I'll describe you through it. We're going to take our role because the three of us are in this story. So on the first page, and it's under Keith Laney's hiddenmission.com link, which we'll be getting into later. So there's this opening page, and then the opening panel is an astronaut, and it's like a low angle. He's kicking up some dirt. He's walking along. And then the second panel shows like a mesa with a faded sun, and the text box says, "A cold wind blasts the Martian surface. The landscape is barren." We move to a third panel with the astronaut walking across this landscape. but for a single figure. Endless box canyons and dead ends surround him. We move to the fourth panel. Yet on he moves along a path divined long ago, confident he knows the way to what he's looking for. And we see this astronaut kind of small now in a narrow sort of valley formation, and we see a couple of shots of him looking around, and there he is. It's Gary Leger. Gary, take it away.
And I know they gotta be here somewhere. Everything pointed to here. Damn it.
And we get to the next page, scroll down to the next page, and we get a shot.
Well, you might have to come out. If you clicked on that, you'll have to come out of there and go and click on the second panel.
Yeah, you can.
A whole separate page.
Yeah, Gary set it up so that if you click again, you get a larger version. And enjoy it, guys. Share this. This is something for Gary and something for all of you to go on a journey with us. And it's a journey of creativity. And we'll get to that. So this next panel, next page is page 2. We see a couple of guys in a cockpit. There's a pilot and a co-pilot or a navigator. And, the first guy looks a little suspiciously like Keith. And the guy in the back looks a bit like me. Anyways, he says, hey, look over there. Is that him? Next panel, Gary looks up, sees the spaceship coming over. We see the title of the story. It's called The Martian Revelation Recovery Project.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And then comes the spaceship. Gary's in the bottom waving down. Keith?
Has to be. Let's see if he can use a lift.
So we click out of that, go to the third page, scroll down. You can click and get it larger. First panel is Gary gets a little impish grin. This guy, man, if you see him, he gets a little grin, and he sees the ship landing. We get a shot from behind. We see Gary going up the little escalator thing, and boom, his helmet's off. He's now inside the ship, and the text box says, as he climbs in and gets seated, he's greeted by an old and possibly new friend. Little does he know that he's about to be taken on a hidden mission. And then there's Keith and I just flashing our smiles. And the last frame
still on.
What's that, man?
I'm still on one. Yeah, that's cool. That's badass. Go ahead, bro. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. And so we have the last shot, and together they jet off into the pale Martian sky, their destiny set for far greater things. He takes a look back at the chasm he'd just been searching through, and the ship is passing over exactly what you were talking about, Gary. It's an image over Mars in Gale Crater that looks suspiciously like a face, a profile of a being with closed eyes. And what I want to do now is click out of that and want to scroll down my items past number 1, past number 2.
Back on the facesofmars.com, everyone.
Back on the facesofmars.com and scroll all the way down to what's mine is. It's number 6, AC Mars, Our Extended Family Part 4. And there in the middle is a high-rise image. Keith, do you want to take this away? You want to do it here?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If you see there's all kind of stuff on the floor of Gale Crater that lead us to believe, or not believe, to know that it's a supremely monolithic and highly settled and civilized area, or at least was in the past. Some of the indicators is like if you look at the panel on we're looking on number 6, right? Mars
Yes, number 6.
Okay. You see the top left image. It's a phoenix there in the image. It sits in a little valley. It's got little pyramids all underneath its wing that's on the left. Those are pyramids, and we see those in the Gale Crater Curiosity images every time it looks up at the mountain. We see those pyramids. But the thing that we're flying over in our little graphic is the object that's to the left, and it's I know no other way to describe that, but a geoglyphic art form carved out of the top of a mountain that's sticking up right there. Part of the stuff there at Gale Crater.
Yeah.
It depicts a woman that it looks female to me anyway. I guess it could be male. And it's really eroded, but the form is still there, and it's got an elongated head and a large bridged nose, and it appears to be blowing. And even the wind has kind of helped out the local landform to make it look like she's blowing. And we call this Aeolus's breath of life, because that just seems like what she's doing. And that's what we should.
I was just telling listeners, don't be perverts.
Well, Well, don't think I haven't thought it. So, because I'm kind of crazy too. But hey, for intents of this show, man, we're looking at the art form. Maybe hey, man, I've seen body parts on Mars before, so that's not even out of the question, Gary. But if you look at the panel on the left, you can actually see where this Aeolus thing is in relation to where the Phoenix thing is at the top. It's kind of at the bottom, at the edge of that white material that is really rippled that you see on the side of Mount Sharp or Aeolus Mons.
Oh yes, that is where that Phoenix thing is. Yeah, there you go. I was too
Yep.
busy looking at the mounds to the left of it.
Oh, but yeah, well, then in the entire area, and we have in-depth pictures of this area, and I've got them all over Gigapam, and that's where we get most of this material from. But if you could scroll down a little bit on the image, you see the head and the elongated head pictures that we have beside there.
Damn.
And so yeah, it's this kind of stuff. It's for real. We have the same sort of things that are carved on the face of Mars that have been part of humanity forever.
Well, and that's the thing, Keith, is I should give the listeners, Gary, a little backstory because I know you and I have had a little back and forth. The reason for the graphic novel is Keith and I have decided that, okay, so Gary,
It's
today,
definitely symbolic. I'll say that much. And I don't know what to say to you guys because I mean, no, you hit right on I'll say the code tune to where it's very symbolic. And I'm just trying to think of everything of what it really is symbolicking to me. But I don't know what to say, guys. I'm blown away.
Well, that's the way it came. That's the way it came, Gary. It came like that. We're with the way we kind of write things and put things together. It just happens.
yeah, Gary, so. Oh, sorry, Keith.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
Well, Gary, today I was a friend of mine sent me this just short video on this woman. She was talking about how people are so addicted to their devices, especially their phones, and she talked about the attention span of the average human being these days is 8 seconds.
Right, enough to like or not like or just move to the next post. Yep.
And get this, the attention span of a goldfish, 9 seconds. So we, and what we wanted to do, what we're going to do.
And they want your boots up there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what we want to do, well, the sound bites. You're right. It's the sound bites. It's a sound bite that can be chopped out, as you say, painted in. And paint by numbers, you can do whatever you want with it, right? But if it's short and sweet,
tell the truth, say it.
Or through the paint by numbers. But anyways, we want to put together a series of these stories where we take this information that's sort of speculation, because until we get our boots on the face of Mars,
it's fun too, and it helps imagine
exactly, Gary,
the Imagineering department in people's minds, and
right. That's the big key is to help boost the imagination of people, because some of these things are really not easy to see for people, and
that's right.
It's stuff that we look at and we've looked at for decades, and we know
that's why they got to pack them and smoke them. That's why they got to pack them and smoke them. Well, it's good to release the hand, the brainwashing hand, or the controlling hand that controls people's minds. It helps it slip off, and it opens the Imagineering departments, and also ocularly, especially for the artistic-minded out there, that then they would see what they'll be like, wow, I can't believe I didn't see that before, and that's the beauty of it.
Well, Gary, and there's this I believe it's Netflix, I think. Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but Netflix, I think, has ordered a whole new series. I think it's about the Second World War, done in a graphic novel animation style. Now, I don't know what that exactly is going to look like.
That would be badass, especially if it's quality work like Todd McFarlane or something. Not
those man.
Japanese art.
It's like no. It's like reverse, because there's so much Well, here we have Stan Lee that just passed away, right, recently. Like this is the point. You said something so critical. You said that the art on Mars, which you've called tattooed art, and Keith has said the same thing. I love that term, because we know that tattoos weave in and out of each other, and literally people are putting their archetypes on their backs and on their arms and on their bellies. And we know what the archetypes.
There's archetypes.
Yes, and we see it on Mars all the time. These people lived in the energetic archetypes of their world. They were calling their gods. Keith, no?
Yeah, well, and after it crumbled, after it was like a cataclysm hit and destroyed a bunch of stuff, the survivors carved over top of everything that was crumbled over.
I do see evidences of that.
Yes, when you got it, you had a big piece of the temple laid over on its side. They carved it into a lion. You know, it looks kind of like a lion. Let's carve a little piece here and a little piece here. There you go. It's a lion now, and that's the kind of thing that you see in successive levels of civilization.
Here on Earth, we have analogs right here.
Right, you retool what's there. You know, it's kind of ugly falling over. Let's see what we can do to make it prettier.
If the planetary surface is also a lot more metallic, like I think, because it's a giant sculpture. Again, the Mars we now know ain't the Mars they now know. But we ain't going there tonight. Just keep it in mind. But therefore, hypothetically thinking about that, if in its conditions or whatever whoop-de-doo did, and if it's metallic or adding metals, there'd be a lot of heated material that may be malleable. They could have also utilized it and or even heated it compared to what we could replicate. Well, not replicate, I would say, theorize about, like with the Bosnian Valley of the Pyramids, heating from above and building these structures and harder than concrete, whether it's above ground carving and or on ground boots activism. And doing this all, a lot of this looks like as if it was melted. It would be like, you've seen those pewter dolls and statues. You know, it's easier to mold and move as things are in a heated state, so as it cools. And you can see that a lot of what I'm talking about in that regard, let alone
just a big conglomeration of vitrified, conglomerations of vitrified stuff. Yeah.
Right, especially around craters, because craters do not have pentagonal shapes by nature, geometrical shapes over and over and over again. And a lot of them look like if they were heated once before, they were kind of painted or scoured or sculpted to where it shows the handiwork of intelligence with geometry and tattoo and scaping fused into one. Whoa. How the hell can that be done? Even with hands on, boots on the ground, and air. Think about the means of the technology and the ability to do all that.
Oh yeah.
And that's what we got to put our boots on.
Well, show them. Speaking of that sort of thing, like I'm talking about, even the stuff that's fallen down gets something on it. There's an example. We've got an example that's here in the images that Andrew's put here. Yeah. It's number 4.
Let me see.
If you go back to the Faces of Mars without losing the radio link page.
All right, 1, 2. Is that the D? No, that's number 2.
It says 4. AC Mars, Our Extended Family, Part 2. It's
oh yeah, Keith, you take it through. This is Keith's material in my drawing at the bottom, but Keith, you do it.
Oh well, this is that triangle thing that's on the side of one of the mounds when you first get into the Murray Buttes, right at where Curiosity is at the foothills of Mount Sharp.
It looks like it busted off something, came down and rested its ass on those what people say is rocks.
Yeah, and we sat, man, when this thing came out, man, we all sat and looked at this thing, at it.
It might be, because it looked like concrete at first, but looking at it more, I was like, go ahead, Keith, because him and I touched on this last week, and it's amazing.
Oh, well, everybody looked at this thing, and we're knowing it's something because we saw it from far off. I mean, they've been looking at this thing for, 40, 50 days from a distance, because you can see it jutting out of the side of the butte from far away. It's not small. The thing itself is like 3.5 foot tall.
Keith, wasn't there a shutdown of Curiosity around this time?
Yeah, Curiosity came around the hill where it got a real close. The first time it got a good close look at it, and it shut down for several days. And we're pretty sure that they went exploring, saying that we had a data glitch, and we're pretty sure they went around exploring. That way they have first pick to go around and alter what we see, and then we're sure they've done that because some of this stuff is so stunning that even doing that, they still can't hide this.
Like what you just said about it being 3.5 foot tall, because that's a good assessment. But how do you know that? Is it because of the pixels?
Yes, because of the photo. Well, we also have closer pictures. We have farther away pictures, and we also know a scale. This picture was scaled, and they had a bar on it which you could figure size from. And so
Oh, that's cool, right?
the actual mound on this thing is something like I think it was 23 meters, something tall, which is nearly 100 feet, man. I mean, from the bottom to the top. These are big mounds. They're not no little small.
Right.
That's a trick of perspective that looking through the Curiosity's cameras give you. These
All
things
right.
are actually huge, man. You can
I
see them
want to
from
see
space
this in
looking down.
VR. You heard they're coming out with they're making VR software. The
Oh,
NASA,
they've already got that. The people in the Curiosity
yeah, but
program,
they're
they can
trying to
walk
make
around
it
it. They can walk
right.
around and look in this stuff.
Exactly, and they're trying to make a version for the public. That is the one I want. I mean, and that's what's needed. You know,
But still,
and-
yeah, even so, on these things that we don't really have complete 3D data to look through. So when they walk around and look behind it, it's not really a complete picture of what's on the other side of it. So it's not like you can bend down and look at it and see every nuance of it like you're standing.
right, right. That makes sense too.
That'll take some improvement in imaging technology of the craft.
Yeah, well, they're going to be bringing helicopters now.
But anyway, when we started looking at this triangle, we saw there's a design inside of it. This is not just a random piece of rubble that's set there. It's something that was carved and set there like a sign at a park.
Right.
And when we got to looking at it, man, and saw that there's a scene on the inside of it, and so we started painting what we saw and the scene comes out to be pretty, it's pretty stunning.
Just
it
painting
actually
the
shows.
features that was there, not painting the features in.
No, just painting what was there. If
That's
it's
right.
if like, and then I always include the non-painted version because once you see it in the painted form, you cannot help but see it in any
Well,
version.
right. It helps.
But it's a visual aid.
Yes.
And I've always, it's and also the painted version is with transparent colors, so it's not covering anything. It's just coloring in a detail. Everything that's colored in there is also a detail that's on the. I mean, it's been crossed and checked and layered over each other and made sure everything was right on it because we want to be accurate with what we're saying.
Right.
And the one way we do this is, first we have the photo, embellish the photo with with details to bring it out, and then Andrew goes in and pulls it out 3D style where you see where it looks like embossed like it actually is on the rock at the lower pictures, and that gives you a real detail. I mean, this thing is showing like a warrior king and an alien face to face, and so you get to wonder, is that maybe what happened here? And that's just here's what happened, or maybe that's just a piece of high art that fell off of the wall.
And Gary, sorry to interrupt, Keith. Just before I forget, Gary, I sent something to Keith. Oh, it was weeks ago, and he went, "Oh my gosh!" It was a frieze from that number of years ago, and they find this pyramid down in this long shaft.
Yeah, it looks like that a little bit. The xenomorph, a predator there in battle.
Gary, there's actually a scene, this frieze, this artwork that shows an alien with an elongated head facing off against one of the predator creatures.
Well, as well, there are friezes in Central America that show a very much the same scene. It's a god or something that's up above. That's usually depicted in the above, and this thing's probably tilted over to its side. But it's tilted above, and then you have whoever the king or whatever before him. Whether that and whatever the story is behind that, it's always the same archetypal thing. It's still the same.
All right, Boris Bellagio did a painting years ago. He does incredible sci-fi, sword fantasy type paintings. I'm sure you've seen his art growing up, maybe not knowing who it was. But he did that such a king, an Aztec-looking dude. I painted it on the trunk of my Firebird, as a matter of fact. And he was battling a serpent and putting a blade through the mouth out the back. And I think that was where he got his idea to what Andy and you were just talking about.
And Gary, you just said it. You did it again. This is what we take the archetypes, we take the symbols, the deep symbols that activate the human spirit, and we bring them up. They keep coming up, and we label them, we tattoo them, we put them on the things that mean that mean the most to us. I mean, the whole elongated head look in the previous image, we have examples of that all over the planet. And Gary, some of this stuff is tens of thousands of years old. They have found human skulls in
tens of millions of miles.
Oh man, it is, yeah, all spread apart. All these different cultures doing head binding, mostly because the nobility thought it was way more beautiful looking. Hey, in our modern
they look like the gods.
Trying to mimic
exactly
whoever
exactly.
they represented. Now, on that note, let's go to a break real quick because I think we just hit a crux here, and yeah, that's very interesting on where this night's going, people. So on that note, again, Bagless, welcome. You still need him.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows,
Yes, fire it up. That's the thing. That's what would help you. Let the hand that helps brainwash you and keep you down be unleashed, to slip loose from the noose, and open your eyes in your imagineering department that God gave you to think with common sense, to use your own eyes and analytical prowess at the amazing images, for instance, that we're seeing from Andrew Currie and Keith Laney. Again, go to www.thefacesofmars.com. I'm your host of the Martian Revelation, Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian, for incredibly great reasons and bizarre reasons. But anyway, like last week alluded to. But this week's a different turn because, I don't know, man, maybe that just needed to come out. And because to take it where it needs to go, the symbology and the signatures are there. And these two efforts are definitely intertwined into the Martian Revelation. One of them I go way back with, been through some whoop-de-doos, and here we are back again through time and converging and, seem to be of a similar mindset regards to where we're at with this data, that there's Martians, I'm looking at the more geopolitical aspects as much as the common sense reactions that I must, being John Connor and all, and what the implications are of what all this, what my place in this is, especially, and again, that comic book, comic pages. For all I know, that could be a comic book. Maybe that's the start of it, tell a tale that someone we both know once said I should tell all this in a comic book. What are they doing? When did they know it? Oh boy, it's just so many. What is it? It's got to make you laugh because it's all a part of it all. And I even admit that. And again, so talking about the aspects of even from religious aspects, so they fallen angels, demons, or little green men, generals, starting to get everyone acclimated to, which would be the Ajiji aspect in my regard. They served the other ones that obviously controlled the way station, as it was. That's what it was applicated as. Did they help cause the war between indigenous Martians? I don't know. We're looking at so many aspects, even to the cultural aspects of evidences we find archaeologically here on Earth. There's certain researchers, like I had Jock Doubleday on a couple weeks ago. You guys might appreciate that one, Keith and Andrew, because of actually what we're talking about. It's not just the pyramids and certain archaeologists, wanting to play down for the status quo of mainstream, but what we can see with our own eyes and analytical prowess as we dig up, that if we dig up the entire valley, gentlemen, I could swear, I'm going to speak for you here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you would appreciate it, the concept, because we would be saying that looks like Mars. If we would have took all that dirt away, everything that's covering all that crap up, for 100 square miles around that thing, more if needed, we would see Mars. We would attribute, I think we were looking at images of Mars. That very Bosnian pyramid has signatures that I see in the D&M pyramid. How? Though they're not looking the same. It don't have to. All it has to have is the signature of the intelligence of the designers who build those bizarre worldish type of structures. Where do we see that best? On Mars. So then Jock Doubleday actually, I think, I'm not going to speak to him, but I think it helped him not only to get a lot of this stuff out about what he was doing over the years, and we just scratched the surface, but he come up with the hypothesis that not only is the pyramid artificial, but also the entire land it sits on, even the Phoenicia River, and they actually co-joined and melded together, just like what we would see on Mars. All that's in the way is truth protective layers. The dirt. What events caused that? And that's reminiscent, again, speaking of the D&M, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. I know I don't want to, you guys want to go where you want to go, but with the symbology of the show pick, which is your picture, Andrew, right, of the pyramid and the event that could have and would have did the Mars and did that pyramid as it shows representing the DNM as what we're seeing in the Bosnian Valley as it was. Well, like we're seeing a fingerprint of how we could see and understand this to be the reality, or am I speaking out of tune? You guys get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
You're an anomalist. I know you know.
Yeah. Well, I've always said, Gary, like if we stripped away the plants, the foliage, everything off of this planet, what would it really look like? I mean, you kind of said it. Like, would we, Keith? What do you think? Like, if we stripped everything out of here, I mean, hopefully not, but if we did, what would we be really revealing here on this planet?
Well, we'd have to drop the oceans a pretty good bit too. We'd have to drop the oceans a pretty good bit too.
Sorry, Keith. What did you say? Sorry, what?
We'd have to drop the oceans a pretty good bit too.
Well, you can see it in the oceans of what Google's not covering up. They are making progress on doing that to hide all that evidence.
Yeah.
And now, if that's the case, and the scripture says too, look, civilizations, do not last forever.
Yeah.
But the earth abideth forever. No, civilizations fall. Man and civilizations fall and rise again. But the earth abideth forever. So therefore, and as a transference of whatever whoop-de-doos happened to the earth, naturally or otherwise, Nibiru, and all the other pictures on the table you want to suggest could whoop-de-doo the earth, over time, things go up, things come down. Things that are underground will eventually be shown again. Under those truth protective layers for that day and age, but now on Mars, it's a different world. It's a different world, but I'm seeing a similar signature. Again, you just said it yourself, under the oceans, take all that away. This is not far-fetched. Yeah. This is not far-fetched at all, gentlemen. And the listeners to the show, looking at those pictures on www, now I'm saying it, thefacesofmars.com, click on those images, check them out, and guys, take us over.
Yeah. So we left the triangle freeze, well, what we're calling the triangle freeze. But yeah, so Gary said, go to thefacesofmars.com, www.thefacesofmars.com. Go down to my items, and we're going to go to number 3. Now, we talked about this last year, so I'll quickly skim through it. And I know Keith wanted it to chip in a little bit here too. So we want to look at number 3, AC Mars, our extended family part 1. And what it is, it's an image of a painting done by the great American space artist Chesley Bonestell, who, he had his big run in the 50s, illustrating all kinds of Collier magazines and these 3 amazing books that was to introduce the American public to basically the conquest of space, this idea of this whole romantic Western frontier. And anyways, in this book, and I happen to have it because I can't let it go and I keep signing it out of the library or getting my son to do it. This one in particular is called The Exploration of Mars, and it's by the science writer Willy Ley, written with Wernher von Braun, who we know is the father of modern American space program, basically. He basically got
Nazis.
Yeah, paperclip Nazi, and Keith has got some interesting comments about
Obersturmgruppführer von Braun.
Yeah, he acted like he didn't really understand what was going on, and that's
you don't get to be an SS officer and not know what's going on.
Yeah,
you are
in essence, Keith, me no comprende.
Yeah, you are initiated in Webelsburg, man. You are a Nazi.
I build missiles.
So we brought a lot of nasties here. I mean, it's funny, Gary. I had this discussion with a friend of my wife's the other day, and he was talking about when he used to work in a machine plant back, 20 years ago or so. Maybe further back. No, I guess it was further back. Anyways, there were all kinds of Europeans working in this. Basically, they made pumps. They made pumps for like just all kinds of stuff, mostly like gas and oil and that. And one of the fellows that he used to carpool with was an old German, and when his mouth opened, like he was a baby boomer in the latter part of the war. There was there's a lot of pain. You lose a war, and there's a lot of pain. And his comment was there was a lot of interesting people that had come over even into our part of the world who kind of buried themselves. So these people were everywhere. The ones that weren't part of the party and the ones that were, and this has been going on. But anyways, we want to get to this number 3. In the book, sort of describes, von Braun talks about sort of the history of telescopes and how when the telescopes got better, we could see Mars better, and all the ideas basically of Mars possibly being inhabited seemed to be kind of pushed aside as we entered sort of into the 20th century and as the telescopes got better. But there's a really interesting chapter in the book where Chesley illustrates this one piece. It's a little tiny painting called Stone Architecture on Mars, demonstrating Mars is 2/3 less gravity on Earth. And it's in my images. And I want to read to you just the caption below in the book, if you don't mind, Gary.
Oh, no, not at all, man. This rocks, and it's all very important.
Yeah.
Everything's relevant.
Right on. So it's on page 66, and it says, but stone architecture on Mars would look spidery to terrestrial eyes. The diameter of
66. Sorry, page 66. But again, read that again. Read that again.
Yeah, the diameter of a 60-foot column would be 2 feet, and the clear span of the lintels would be 27 feet. However, if the same type of stone were used, such a structure would be just as massive under the weaker Martian gravity. Now, that's on the bottom of the page, which is the image that I have up, and you can see these two little astronauts sort of wandering around this ancient Martian temple. My first comment would be, why in a science book that's now more focused on, sort of convincing the American public in the mid-50s to get on board, basically spend the money to upstart NASA and get to Mars, get to the moon, get to Mars.
Find a bunch of structures, since they're acclimated to the big structures.
Yeah, but why put this image in when they're at the same time in the book, Willy Ley is dispelling any notion of there being any kind of intelligent life on Mars? It's kind of like, no, well, nobody believes that now. And then the image above, he shows the ruins of the temple Zeus, Olympus near Athens, which, Gary, is where the album Methodia was recorded, which was the basically theme album for the 2001 Mars Odyssey, which, Gary, was to check the atmosphere for signs of life or previous signs of life, which was it successful?
The atmosphere. That means the script. The atmosphere means the air of the script that exhales out of the mouth. A thin atmosphere is poisonous gas. Surely no intelligent life could survive there.
Yeah, and well, here's the thing: is they insert this image. They insert this image, Gary, and it's like, okay, we now have these ruins on Mars. We have these two very strange-looking astronauts doing something beside a really tall column, which I zoomed in, and I will quickly talk about that. Why are you inserting this when you're saying there? Oh, it's only speculation. It's if there was a structure on Mars. Right back to the heart of Brookings, where they said, if we find something, how do we may or may not relate this to the public? Sort of, maybe, kind of. Well, we'll see.
Under what circumstances will we be presented or withheld?
Exactly. And
exactly. And I got a working model of it. That's why I'm here back through time.
And Gary, so what I did is I blew up the middle part of the painting where it shows these sort of two astronauts, speculative astronauts, wandering around, and it looks like they're just waving their hands around. But when I see it, I see there being a third something in between the two pillars slumped down. And to me, when I zoom in, and I've done the drawings here, it looks again.
Subsurface legal.
There you go, an elongated headed.
Trying to get between bars.
And Keith, yeah, there you go, exactly. There's the symbology there. But Keith, you wanted to add to this, right?
Notice this before Keith. Notice it's sitting between the twin. They look like twin towers. This represent, that's very interesting symbology there too. But I'm just making a loud mental note of that. Didn't mean to throw you off track. Go ahead, Keith.
No. Keith, I know you wanted to say something here. Oh.
Is he with us?
Yeah, he's being shot in the head.
See the right hand? Oh, not Keith ain't being shot in the head.
No, that's Keith saying the guy on the picture is getting shot in the head. Now, by a guy who's holding a 6-pointed star up in his left hand.
That's true. I can't tell if that's a gun or something. But
the
yeah,
thing
it looks
he's
like
got
he's
in
still
his-
shooting something.
Yes, well, you see it's shooting a ray out of it, which appears on the other side of the column and goes through the guy's head.
To the subsurface illegal's head between
Yeah,
the
and if you look in the fellow's upraised hand, on the other hand, he has got a 6-pointed star in it. And what that means.
But is he holding up? Is that his arm or a weapon?
Maybe he took it from the guy. He took it from the guy. And then shot him.
Oh, got you.
Yeah, he took it from him and shot him. It's a 6-pointed star, symbolic of tetrahedral.
Our American Boost just brought you some freedom.
So Gary,
go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
Well, Gary, Keith, what did Chesley know? Did this just come as like, look, this guy was a really sober painter. He was an architectural renderer. In other words, he's almost like an architect. He takes the floor plans of a building, anything, and he can zoom it up into 3D. He can read the thing. He was part of the designing the eagles and the facade, the Art Deco facade of the Chrysler Building in New York. He was part of designing the Golden Gate Bridge, or at least showing these cutaways that would give these detailed representations to sell it to the public that we needed to build, or not we, they needed to build this bridge. This guy was not a flight of fancy artist. Now, he was one of the highest paid matte painters in Hollywood, so he did do, more imaginative stuff. But Gary, this guy was a sober artist, man. He was a crusty dude. And
that image is so symbolic. And
Well,
you're right. You're
Notice
talking
how
about
the shot up alien guy looks like the guy that's on the small guy in the triangle that we were just looking at.
Oh, that's funny. Well, it looks like to me he's going.
You see, he's got the almond-shaped eye and the big head, but he's smaller than.
And
but it's funny you bring up Brookings, because on the facesofmars.com page also too, people, after tonight's show and throughout the archives, I'm going to start making archive pages as well, putting it out there. I got them made, I just got to put them up. But scroll on down to where you see Brookings initiated in 1952. Watch this movie, Red Planet Mars, from 1952, and you tell me if this was not a basis of a plan for what was officially brought forth in 1958, which we're talking about. This is, so it's very incredible. We could always talk about discussions of it on another show, but these seeds are planted because all this is relevant and important. And I think you guys might get that. And I'd like your opinion on a future show regarding to that video. That's a whole show in itself just to talk about it, especially the circumstances are ironic to some things. But it's kind of funny though. But go ahead.
Oh, Gary, and on that thought process that you just laid down there, Wernher von Braun wrote a science fiction novel, Keith, in 1950 called Project Mars: A Technical Tale. And in it, there's an international team of astronauts that travel to Mars. And basically, the Earth is almost, I think, did they go to war, Keith? I can't remember. But anyway, somebody gets a platform on the moon. And basically that shuts down any kind of war that's going to ever happen on Earth, because once you get that high ground, it's over.
Yet the Chinese, again, I have another word from someone that want me to use. Oh, well, they're the enemy. They're going to put that base on the far side of the moon. That's what they're working on now. That's why we have to establish space now.
That's why the
Get out of here, commie traitors, Americans. We're going to make America great permanently, and we will use the so-called illegals or people wanting to come into this country, sign them up for jobs to help make the Space Force, where we could also get those jobs to make the Space Force, to make the Space Force vision, not just be able to stand up in 2019, but be able to have many, many boots and others following it by Elon Musk's timeline. That could be done. It's not impossible.
And
it's not possible.
And it may be happening already, Gary. I have a friend. He's
going to develop another one.
Yeah, I got a friend who's a.
You can't make this shit up.
No, you can't. And I
did it again.
Sorry, man. Well, I got a friend of mine. He's a robotics guy, right? And he also does, like, he's a high level electronics dude. And he got picked up by a company locally here in Burnaby, and I won't mention his name. And he does targeting systems. This company does, all they do is they design targeting systems for warships. And I asked him I think we were either on the phone, I think we were on a cell phone, or yeah, it was on the cell phone. And I said, "Hey, man, do you do anything in space?" And the line went quiet. And he said, "I can't talk about anything like that on on a line like this." I mean, we just don't know. No, there might be people out there who they don't even know what they're making. Because remember, at the end of the Second World War, the Germans were producing more U-boats, more tanks, more armaments because of their compartmentalization of production. They went away from the big factories, right? Because they were just getting bombed and shelled. So they just separated all the different pieces all around, the different countries they had taken in Germany. And then they would bring all these pieces, like let's just say a U-boat, to a dock, slap it together right there, and they had it made. The production was higher at the end of the Second World War at any other time during the war. You guys, this could be going on under our noses right now. A Space Force could have been built long ago if people didn't even know they were building a targeting system.
Look what Trump said. Remember, again, now going by Brookings also, we got both presidents, vice and the president, making some amazing damn disclosures in your face, pun intended, and everything that was said and attributed about that, where he said, we may have a Space Force. We'll develop another one. It was like he was confirming, hey, saying it without saying it, but he outright said it. So we're being told, but it depends who knows how to see it, to read it and then be trained as it was over a period of time. Trust me, I know. And at least enough to see. That's how I'm saying it. It's so in your face. And then it becomes easier to see it. And it even becomes comical in some regards. But then that makes it more obvious also.
Yeah.
Maybe the humor is supposed to be there. Again, based on Brookings, so we don't freak out a la Brookings. Who do I sound like there?
Well, Gary,
a parrot.
In this novel by von Braun,
you didn't get that, did you?
No, we did. We do. But von Braun, in this book called The Project Mars: A Technical Tale, this international team of astronauts travel to Mars and land at the South Pole. There they find this, guess what? An underground civilization inhabited by, guess what? Martians. And guess what they look like? They wear long robes, and their heads are elongated, and they have a parliament or some sort of governmental structure. And guess what the leader of their group is called, their government? The Elon. Gary, this was the
elongated heads, the Elon. But it also sounds like, the Martian Chronicles. And off the phone, we were talking about this. I mean, off the air, we were talking about this. Yeah. Phone about the book. I want to read the book. That sounds a lot more exciting, and I probably more in depth of where I would have liked to see the movie. I heard that they were going to make a remake. Actually, maybe Peter Jackson would like to do something like that with a long movie. I mean, I think that would be worth it.
Yeah, and Gary, I hadn't even thought of elongated heads, but Elon, as in Elon Musk, the leader of the Martian civilization.
All right. Well, again, what did I tell you also off the phone?
Yeah,
many things can lead to have more than one face of understanding attributed to it, and all be just as relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, all of these correlations and all of these little seeds that are planted, and again, like, did von Braun, using the word Elon, did he? I mean, if you look it up, you look at sort of the meaning of Elon. It means the oak tree, right? I mean, well, boy, that has a esoteric meaning to it too. But it's also, it's like inspirational, and it's solid, and it's also morally high. Like, that's but there's a lot more going on with the oak tree than that. And was von Braun having a flash forward, 70 years where he foresaw Elon Musk, or is it, like you said, elongated heads? Who knows, man? But it's that Brookings
and or both can apply just the same.
Exactly.
So if they both apply, because look, we're talking about it. You're making the connection now, therefore it applies. The craziness is just, the madness, referring back to last week, is how you start to learn to see this. and applicate it, because it's so in your face now. The dam's breaking. They're following the Brookings protocols, the very leaders themselves. And everyone's clapping. Yay! And I would have been like on a Horseshack. Ooh, excuse me, sir. Let me clarify your words you just said. Thank you. But obviously we could see that if we want to see that, because it's out there. It's not inconsistent with the model, and that's the data that has to be followed, no matter how unbelievable it may appear. Because remember, they're all following a script that's on the surface, which everyone thinks is the reality. But no, if you know how to read between the lines, you could see the underlying storyline, which is the reality. And that is what makes our fate and secures the Martian revelation for us all. Not just me. And it ain't all about vengeance. It's about, well, if I'm to believe him there too, this will save civilization. Again, I hope that cup of wine is ready.
Well, Gary, you just said it again. Did you do that on purpose? Your banner for tonight was the illustration I did that you were referring to of the this great tsunami that hit the D&M pyramid on the north. Keith, am I getting this right? Northeast side, and you just said the dam is breaking. Did you do that on purpose?
Again, my own words are scripted in too. My walk is not of my own volition. Yeah. Therefore, whatever has to be said will be said, and that's by all parties here. As we say this, like the show last week and every other week, once we put it out, we think it's just the people here now that it concerns. No, it doesn't. Okay? It's those down through time that are monitoring this show and monitoring the timeline. But I'm crazy, and it's going too far advanced beyond the scope of our conversation this night. But maybe another night. That would be great. But so back again, no. But what made me also think about the Bosnian Valley, because that's kind of like the same scene we could attribute there too here on Earth. As above, so below. But what do we think, over such a destruction of whatever happened, demons or anyone else. It was intelligence, and whatever happened there, obviously lives were lost. But at least we're thankful for the details we get to see there compared to seeing it here on Earth. And look, it's a mountain. It's all natural. Yeah, all these giant man-made, or hopefully man-made, we still don't really know, do we? Blocks, hardest construction, 135 megapixels. The strongest we could do on Earth, cement-wise, is what? Maybe 80 if we're lucky under the most prime conditions. So, I mean, not only was the technology there and the advanced in mind and how to applicate things and the motivational force of beings actually do it, and the logistics and doing some on such a large scale, that brings the same questions to Mars. And what I see there, I'm seeing what you guys are describing for the D&M, but I'm also seeing its sister, as it was, its cousin, the Bosnian Pyramid Valley, the pyramids complex there. That is not just a pyramid complex. Artificial mountainings. Remember that, Keith? We used to use that term years ago.
Ecor, house like mountain built.
Say that again?
Ecor. It's an Ecor, a house like mountain built.
Exactly. He brings it back to some areas. He's funny, but he's right. Yeah, and it all matches, and that's exactly what it is and represents. Therefore, hey, I don't know. All doors are open, and obviously they need boots from a threat coming from deep space. Are they returning? I don't know.
Well,
but something returns. We know that according to that story.
Well, apparently, Gary, something left bases all around us too. Something left bases in celestial cities all around us. Look what we had 67P.
Look at that painting again in the show pic, Keith. It also depicts I was gonna say it looks like the exploded planet hypothesis as part of the cause, and that you know what I mean. So. But go ahead, Keith. I just want to throw that out there for the listeners. You guys captured a lot in that image.
Thanks, man.
Well, it's made to be generic, in a way, because it's what we could think of with cataclysm, And based on also by the striated surface that's all around that D&M, looks to me like once upon a time it was Metropolis and it got smashed flat, and that's just the foundations that we have left. And it's piled over with dirt. And yeah, if we could remove some of that dirt, yeah, there's no telling what we'd find there, and at Gale Crater and all over the place on Mars, because it's the cataclysms that hit there, man. Were really, really horrible. Really, really world wracking. Look at the tidal wave over the D&M. We know the D&M's a mile and a half high. It's got a tidal wave. It's over the top of it. And as it had to been, because if you look at the damage that's on the northeast side of the D&M, it reaches almost to the pinnacle.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and that side's all bunched up, and the other side's all clean. All it got was the storm, and the other side got the wave.
I tried not to cover the peak. At least you could see. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
It still captures the essence. The peak's there. You could easily see that wave towering above it, or just cresting it as it was.
Hey, I'm going to bring us out of that. I'm going to bring us off of Mars for a little bit and put us into near Earth orbit.
Okay.
Because there's some crazy stuff going on right in front of our face, and nobody's paying much attention to it. And
I know we've been seeing a lot of rust. That's what all this represents. A lot of rust and ruins, right? So I don't know where you're talking about.
We discovered these near Earth objects around us. First being Ryugu. And so we decided to send a little craft to it. Well, Japan decided to send a little craft to it, seeing how Ryugu actually means the palace of the Dragon King, and they have a whole legend and mythology around this around a story about a youth that goes and visits the Dragon King in his palace, and it has.
Right, but Keith, before you go on with the story, let me just say though, unless you're in a rush, we got as much time until I close the show I was granted. So, and I know, I think our buddy Mean Green wants to come on in, join the discussion. And again, this is an amazing discussion where it's happened to be going. And it's relevant and consistent, isn't it? Overall, to where all this research really is leading us, even though we're not being outrightly told. I mean, you guys see it was like so obvious. And go ahead, Keith, continue on. I didn't mean to cut you off. But I just want you to know, bro, you're more than welcome to chill.
Oh well, this might take a minute too. That's why I'm going to go ahead and get into it, because there's other stuff to cover that we haven't got to on the other page too. But if you go to thefacesofmars.com and you go under the show marquee and you see where it has my link to thehiddenmission.com, right? There's a banner right above the graphic comic strip that we got there, and click on the Hidden Mission link, and it'll take you to a page. And the first thing you'll see is Volcano on Mars, but we're going to skip all past that. We've pretty much talked that pretty much. But if you go down a little bit to where you'll see the